So here I'll be doing a review for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. It's a sequel to the first Aquaman, which already came out 5 years ago now in 2018. But not only is this a sequel to the first Aquaman, it is the finale for the DC Extended Universe as a whole. Last year it was announced that James Gunn would be taking over, rebooting the whole universe after it had been struggling financially over the past year and a half, starting with his own directed Superman movie in 2025. That's left every DC film in 2023 to be basically a dead man walking, as audiences based on the box office obviously weren't in love with the current DCEU. For people who think Marvel's had a year, look and see how DC films have done over the past year and a half. They haven't done at the box office. Now, I did enjoy the first Aquaman when it came out. It won't go down as a top 10 superhero film of all time or anything like that, but it was an all-around good comic book blockbuster that was definitely fun and was just what the DCEU needed at the time it was released after coming off of Justice League. Money-wise, it was by far their best performing movie, the only DCEU film to make $1 billion, so it was definitely a bona fide hit with audiences. There was no hype or excitement for this film, however, and you can include me with that. Given the current state of DC films over the past year and a half, it just had felt like audiences had given up. I didn't even bother to see Blue Beetle, their most recent film, because I just really didn't care anymore. And that's coming off of paying to see box office flops The Flash and Shazam! Fury of the Gods this year. The only curiosity that I had, and I'm guessing a lot of others felt this way, was the marketing for this film was basically hiding Amber Heard's mirror, and to see if that was actually going to be true in the movie. When the first Aquaman came out, you could say that she was on you could call it winning side of the argument when it came to the whole depth Heard court of public opinion. Well, things certainly changed in 2022, leading for Warner Brothers and DC making the choice to all but hide her in the trailers. That was the only thing that got me to sort of pique my interest in the trailers, was seeing how the hell they were going to hide her in the marketing to avoid any controversy with audiences as much as they could. In this sequel, Aquaman is going through the ups and downs of balancing his King of the Seas responsibilities and being a dad. This is when his arch-enemy, Black Manta, discovers an ancient evil which he teams up with that is hell-bent on destroying the surface world but will help him get revenge on Aquaman. Now, I don't really feel like bullshitting through this review. Like I said, the thing I was most curious about with this movie was what the hell they were going to do with Queen Mira. She was obviously very prominent in the first film. It's tough really for this one just to write her out unless she was going to die off screen or something like that. I mean, she's Aquaman's wife. She's the queen of Atlantis, mother of his child. She kind of has to be there. Now, this film had a hellish production. Lots of reshoots, delayed a year from its original release in 2022, some disastrous test screenings from what's been reported. Like I mentioned, the trailers all but hid Miss Heard. And when watching the movie, I gotta say that in a world where hypothetically you didn't know whatever controversy was surrounding her presence in the film, well, her presence in the film is far from hidden when you actually watch the movie. Now, compared to the first film, it's definitely a reduced role. But like I said, if you didn't know whatever controversy was going on with her, you would think that the sequel is just choosing to focus on other characters. And this happens on all the times in sequels where supporting characters' roles in the sequels through the series fluctuate. She's not the only one with a reduced role in here. Aquaman's mom, the Queen, played by Nicole Kidman, she doesn't have as big a role in this film compared to the previous one. I will say that there was a moment where it did feel like they were intentionally taking her out of the movie for a certain period of time, but she is there and far from what I would call blatantly hidden. More than anything, the scenes that she is in, she doesn't really have a whole lot of lines. There's a lot of just standing there or sitting there making one or two comments in a scene. Like I mentioned, for an Aquaman film, given her role, it'd be really tough to just hide her entirely. There weren't any sort of verbal reactions in the auditorium that I saw the film in from the audience, given, think like, oh, people gonna boo or something like that. Nothing like that. So for those wondering about what you get with Mira in this film, well, that's what you get. And then there's the rest of the movie, which is far less interesting. Mainly that's because the main plot is just so bad in this. The movie might have had some decent plot conflict going on had it chose to focus on an uncorrupted Black Manta and his personal rage and drive to kill Aquaman for what happened to his father. If the movie had went in that direction, it might have had something. Instead, the movie goes the direction of having his personal rage taken over by this ancient evil that comes from this Triton that he finds. And then that personal drive doesn't really matter because it's the ancient evil that's really taken over here. Black Manta has just been a really tough character to get behind in these films. There could have been a decent attempt to do something Killmongerish, but it just goes to show what bad writing and story can do for your movie. He's really a terrible character. His dialogue's terrible. At times, some of the acting isn't really the best. The way he's written, some of his interactions with Aquaman, as I mentioned, the dialogue not very good. Not a very good character at all. Because so much of this movie is him and this ancient evil, it really sinks this film's story from the start. Story-wise, the only decent thing going on here is the pairing of Aquaman and his half-brother Orm. He and Manta were sort of the back-and-forth antagonists of the first film. In this film, in very low-key fashion, Arthur enlists the help of his half-brother to help him stop Manta and this ancient evil. Now, there are some decent scenes in development between the two after their major conflict throughout the first film. One of these scenes was the only sort of legit laugh I had in the film, and it actually plays into the mid-credit scene for those who have seen the film. I said this whole thing is done in very low-key fashion. The movie's dialogue actually calls direct reference to the whole Thor and Loki relationship, making me realize that the whole setup of Arthur and Orm is virtually identical to what happened with Thor and Loki in Thor the Dark World, which just came out 10 years ago. I guess it was paying tribute. But it's nowhere near as impactful or entertaining as anything seen from Thor and Loki in the Thor sequels. There's really nothing great or even good to say here with this film. I guess you could say that some of the CGI is, solid, moments where some of the visuals are okay, but definitely in some moments where it doesn't look so good. Definitely some of the underwater scenes, some of the hair, sort of the flow just looked like needed another rendering, kind of looked like stop motion or something. No action scenes were all that memorable. Like I said, I only got one real laugh. The most entertaining thing in this film, besides the whole Amber Heard stuff, was a scene where someone eats a bug. You'll have to watch the film to see how that plays into it. I will say that the film wasn't painful, though. I've seen some really bad stuff this year, like The Haunted Mansion or Five Nights at Freddy's, where I came out saying, "F*** that." This wasn't on that level. For some of the terrible scenes that there are, like the whole jungle chase scene here, there was an amusing bit or a character moment between the two brothers that kept it from being awful, though obviously still not good. I will say that I do like Jason Momoa as Aquaman. He's got a fun personality and style to him. Obviously he's far from the typical or prototypical Aquaman from the original DC comics and most of DC history, but whatever. He made the role his own, and he's been fun in it. The only weird thing is that weird sort of high-pitched chipmunk yell that he does every now and then throughout the DC films he's been in, and actually he does it quite a bit through this film, so it is what it is when it comes to that. But overall, he's been solid as Aquaman. I'm guessing this will probably be the last time you see him in this role. So yeah, the movie, while not being awful, is still obviously not good. I'd give it 5 out of 10 fishes. And thus is the end for the DCEU. It had a 10-year run from 2013's Man of Steel to 2023's Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Though this universe or these films have produced some what I think like legit good movies, the first Wonder Woman, the first Shazam, the Suicide Squad, there's been some great casting like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn and some other good stuff. I've liked Ben Affleck as Batman and some other casting here and there. The best way to describe this universe was a huge failure. There was just no clear plan or through-line story post-Justice League once they abandoned the whole Zack Snyder vision for better or worse. Multiple plans that were implemented and then tossed aside, and then just some spectacular box office flops. Basically, everything they've done since 2020 has just bombed big time. Some of that is due to the pandemic, like Wonder Woman 1984, but posts like The Suicide Squad from 2021, they've had no excuse. Black Adam, bomb. The Flash, bomb. Shazam, Fury of the Gods, bomb. Blue Beetle, bomb. And Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, from what it's looking like, I don't know if it's going to be as big a bomb as the other ones I mentioned, but definitely not going to come close to making $1 billion like the first Aquaman. For those who think Marvel has struggled over the last year and a half, and well, they definitely have when you see how their movies have done, it's nothing compared to what a shit show that DC has been for Warner Brothers. There is no doubt about that. So that'll do it for this review of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Made it to the end of this video. Thank you for watching.
Shall I say Amber's turn?
Mr. Momoa, how do you even know?